These bottles are French, from around about 1880. This is called a filigree brass overlay. They have a glass stopper. Essentially dressing table bottles. You can find them, this is cobalt glass, you can find them with sort of views of Paris, but these are quite unusual because they have little portraits on ivory, hand painted, very, very delicate. They are two separate little portraits. These sort of bottles come in emerald glass, come in ruby glass, but the most desirable colour is this deep cobalt. But they're lovely little bottles. So I always, if I find them, I always go for these because they're just sort of delicate and they tell such a wonderful story, going all the way back to sort of 1880, something like that.
So is it silver tops as well, or a little bit brass?
No, that's brass. It's polished brass.
Polished very well.
Yeah. Thank you very much indeed. No, very often, it's an interesting point, but very often when I get bottles, I know that they're used because they are in a really, really grubby state. And it's all caked, and which is nice because it means that somebody did use them, but then with a little bit of TLC, a little bit of polish, and a little bit of care, and you can bring them up to this, nice and shiny again, ready to go again. They run at about £250 each, but it's unusual to get a pair.
Effectively, you've got a client base, especially the ones that come into my shop, who are all under the age of 40. They've got their own homes and they're entertaining for the first time, and they're suddenly finding if they add something that is classy, it lifts the entire dining experience, so much so that their friends are saying, gee, this food's fantastic, but it's actually something that they've got at Sainsbury's or Woolies or whatever, put out nicely, but in nice sort of cut glass or a nice bowl, and then added something like, say, the George Jensen salts. Now, George Jensen silverware salts, again, I mean, these are very hip. They don't even use spoons. You did get spoons with them, but most people will put the rock salt in. You take it out, sprinkle it on your food, and off you go. So it's a sort of a hip, clean, nice look that really sort of sets in with the kind of idea that they've got. So it's those kind of pieces we're finding a ready market for at the moment, and obviously that's where our growth is going to come in this industry in the next 20 years. And they are now thinking along those lines. They can go into a shop and find a mass-produced thing, but who wants to have the same look as everybody else? You want to have something that's your own.
And they can have a conversation piece about it.
Yeah, and also it's a memory. They were out on holiday, they bought something that they remembered, they took it home. That's the kind of thing that they're going to remember forever.
Fantastic. So what are your kind of the most popular first of all, for maybe the internationals at the moment?
It's quite interesting because they tend to look for things that have either a really classic, unique kind of look, or something that you can't buy anywhere else, something that's unique. An apple corer. Now, you know, you take that and you put that onto a Sunday sort of table, brunch table, and you put a whole lot of apples, and people say, what's that for? And the kids especially, they want to see it. You call the kids over and say, now watch this. Pop it on top of an apple, push it down. Suddenly you've got apple halves and quarters there, you know, that they can pick and sort of put honey on or dip it in the muesli or whatever the case is. Exactly. And it becomes something that's then interactive. People then talk about it. And if you've got a dinner party where you've got people who don't know each other, it's marvelous to throw a few of these kind of things into the mix, because it gives people, you know, much like sort of MasterChef where they've got something to talk about. It's the same kind of thing, but obviously on a more sophisticated and more enjoyable level. Yeah. And you're buying things that were made at a time when there are not a million of these available. You know, it's not something that you can go into one of the major stores and anybody can buy. These are things that are pretty rare in amongst themselves. They're things that get treasured by people, and obviously for me that's what we want to see. They get looked after by the next generation. Yeah. We've got a sugar spoon that was basically made by a member of the Fox family in 1867 in London, and it was made as a besom broom. And I remember when I got my first one, which was about probably 2 years ago, we haven't seen them on the market for literally for about 15 years worldwide, and then all of a sudden within a period of 3 years about 8 or 9 came on the market. They must have been part of a private collection, and that's where the Victorians were at their best, was making novelty silverware that sort of moved to the table. And young people like that kind of story. You know, it's the kind of thing that you pick up and you go, what's this? And you go, it's a sugar spoon. No, but that's too good to be a sugar spoon. It's a work of art.
And so you mentioned social media, so that's another thing. So a lot of traders don't tend to be on social media.
I'm very active on social media. Yeah, look, I mean, I must be honest with you, it hasn't taken off yet. We're still very much at a grassroots level. If we look at social media for this fair, the social media campaign has been very strong. The following is still coming, and it's definitely better this year than it was last year, but it really is baby steps. We're also learning what works and what doesn't. And in terms of sort of people who look at it and go, wow, you know, that's caught us. What images did we put out that really resonated? That's what we're learning at the moment. And a lot of the things that I'm buying now are geared towards the image. So in other words, if you look on our social media pages, we've got quite a few things that we photographed that have a very strong image, and that's what's pulling people.
Oh, brilliant. Do you think it's bringing in a different market?
It's definitely hitting a market that has never been to this fair before. Because we call the old corkscrew, we tend to do a lot of corkscrews obviously in the shop, and one of our favorite corkscrews is the ladies' legs. Now, I mean, these are great. They were made in Germany between about sort of 1890 and 1895, and they're known as ladies' legs corkscrews. They were modeled after the can-can dancers' stockings of the day. Now, at the time, the Germans were far more progressive than the English. Don't quote me on that, but that was why they did it. They made it to basically shock the English society. So this would have been shocking in its own, because it was basically showing the ladies' stockings, which was, you know, very, very big obviously in Paris. So they made the corkscrew, and what they did at the time was they made them in 3. So you had the one with full stockings, then you would have one with half stockings, which was sold the other day, and then you had one with no stockings completely. So the story goes that if you were an aspiring German gentleman, you took 3 bottles of wine and a lady and 3 corkscrews on a picnic. And by the time you got to the 3rd bottle, everybody was aware of where the picnic was going to end. Okay. And so the social message that they were sending across was a lot of fun. In its day, it was such a shocking corkscrew, so few of them sold, because it was quite outrageous. So of course these were the most popular, and today are the most affordable. This is the most expensive. And they range in price from about sort of £450 right through to sort of 1800, depending on the maker. The maker obviously will, to a corkscrew collector, will sort of move the costing. So yeah, one of the more fun things that we do in the shop, and certainly hits it resonates with the younger clientele, because they come in and they go, I can see that in my wine bottle. Yeah, you know, you put it in.
These are teapots, but it was not for tea, it was for Chinese wine. We called it Cadogan because a British lady, she fell in love for this kind of teapots, not for tea, and because her last name was Cadogan, when she brought it to England, the name that dealers and in history books call it is Cadogan, because of the last name of the lady who brought it in the 19th century from China to England. And they are 19th century. This is Celadon glaze, but you have them in other colors like blue, and they are in perfect condition.